distinguished group of attendees we have tonight. Nice to see everyone. Welcome. I'm Maria Mark. I'm president of Beaches Watch, and I'll be hosting the meeting tonight. So we have just a few announcements before we get into the nitty-gritty of the meeting. So we are videotaping our meetings like we do every meeting. It will be on our YouTube channel tomorrow, as well as a link on our website. Our YouTube channel is Beaches Watch 2012. We are a membership-based organization, and as you know, we have our annual membership drive that we run throughout the year. So it's $15 for individual, $20 for family, and we have $5 for students. So you can renew your membership tonight and or make a donation. Our ladies sitting at the table where you signed in would be happy to take your money, or you can go online at our website at beacheswatch.com. We have a very nice distinguished list of elected officials. So we'll start with Sandy Golding, who's a councilwoman at Jacksonville Beach. Corey Byland, who's mayor of Neptune Beach. Jessica Ring, commissioner of Atlantic Beach. We have Ron Salem, our City of Jacksonville Councilman at Large. Chris Hoffman, who is mayor of City of Jacksonville Beach. Candace Kelly, commissioner at Atlantic Beach. We have Jerry Holland, who's a supervisor of elections. And we have Gary Flower, county judge. Nice to see you. We have Curtis Ford, mayor, City of Atlantic Beach. We have Greg Sutton, City of Jacksonville Beach, City Councilman. And we have Richard Pike, City Manager of Neptune Beach. Also, Chief Pike. I'll still call you Chief. It's endearing. It's endearing. Coming up, we will just talk about our legislative session. It's been extended from May 12th to June 6th. Our June meeting will be a legislative update, so please come to that so you can hear all the good, bad, and ugly that went on in Tallahassee. Beaches Go Green Earth Day Community Cleanup. So we will have a combined Atlantic Beach, Neptune Beach. Oh, I'm sorry, they already had the cleanup. This is the numbers. Sorry, these are the results. So between Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach, we had over 300 volunteers, 334 volunteers. Cigarette butts, 8,754. That's a lot. And thanks to Jacksonville Beach, I just understand you guys just passed an ordinance banning smoking and vaping on the beach. Thank you. Trash was 420 pounds of trash. Jacksonville Beach, they had over 200 volunteers, 274, and they picked up 11,000 cigarette butts. Wow. And 640 pounds of trash. So thank you to all the volunteers. Thanks to everyone who organized that at Beaches Go Green. We want to also congratulate our recipient of our 2025 Flan Sharp Memorial Scholarship, Olivia Dolan. She will be presented at the Senior Award tonight at Fletcher High on May 21st. So, and as I said, save the date. Our meeting for June will be the good and bad of the 2025 legislative session, and we'll be here at the beach starting at 7 o'clock. So just quickly, show of hands, how did you hear about tonight's meeting? Digital Beaches Leader? Okay. Facebook? Ooh, bless you. Newsletter? Yay. Our news email, Jacksonville Today. There is a daily mail, thank you. Our website. Okay. And then your neighbors, your friends told you about the meeting? Okay, good. So, we have a jam-packed meeting tonight, so let's let's go ahead and start with that. So tonight we're going to talk about our beaches interlocal agreements with Jacksonville. This is going to be our history of conflict and compromise. We have as our panel, Bill Gulliford, the former Atlantic Beach Mayor and our Jacksonville City Councilman. Bill? Everyone there. And we have George Forbes, who's the former Jacksonville Beach City Manager for how many years, George?
Almost
24 years. So George has seen it all. So we will go ahead and start. George, whenever you want your PowerPoint, just let me know your PowerPoint, let me know. Okay? All right.
Good evening. October 1st, 1968. Does anybody know the significance of that date? No, it was my oldest son's birthday. Which is why I remember the date of consolidation and vice versa. So yes, it was, and consolidation started that date. And actually, the ability to consolidate the local government was already in place when in 1935, at the request of the Duval County delegation, the Florida legislature adopted a statute enabling consolidation in Duval County based on if the voters approved. In the early 1960s, Jacksonville was a mess. Like in many cities, it witnessed the flight to the suburbs, creating a population decline within the city limits and subsequently an erosion in the tax base. From 1950 to 1965, population dropped from 204,000 to 196,000, while Duval County's population rose from 304,000 to 455,000 in the same period. Attempts at annexation had failed. A reduction in city revenue led to poorer services, and that was compounded by a system of control by individual city commissioners over the various departments, police, public works, and the like. They became powerful and many times corrupt fiefdoms, little empires. It all came to a head in 1966 when the indictment of public officials on 142 counts of larceny and bribery. Indicted were 4 of 9 city councilmen, all 5 city commissioners, the city auditor, 1 of 5 county commissioners, and the county purchasing agent. The city tax assessor pled the 5th and resigned. Obviously, the motivation for change was in the air, and the study had been ongoing for some time. There were a number of people who believed consolidation was the answer. So without getting deep in the weeds, the movement to consolidation started in earnest, and that led to a referendum and a vote in 1966. For the beaches, this is where it gets interesting. The proponents of consolidation thought the vote was going to be very close. Voters in both Tampa and Orlando had turned down consolidation. Their citizens had voted against it. Amongst the proponents for consolidation, there was concern that with a close vote, the independent-minded people at the beach would vote against it en masse, and that could lead to it being defeated. So, they added a second question to the ballots for the beaches, cities, and Baldwin, which in effect said, if consolidation passes, do you want to retain your municipal governments? Well, the beach cities voted on consolidation, and it was 2,173 for and 2,003 against. So it would have passed, it did pass at the beach. The vote to retain municipal government at the beaches was 2,598 for to 1,534 against. The voters in Baldwin also voted to retain their city governments. And by the way, the citywide or countywide vote on consolidation was 54,493 for and 29,768 against, not nearly as close as the sponsors had thought it might be. In retrospect, because the second question was added, we still have our local governments. Without that question, consolidation would have passed and our local governments would have been abolished. And on October 1st, as I said, my first son was born, and so was Jacksonville and Duval consolidation, sort of. Now the consolidated City of Jacksonville government was the Beaches County government, nothing more and nothing less. The structure had not been anticipated, nor was there anything in writing to guide and direct the relationship, and that led to problems and lawsuits, several of which I didn't know about, but I'm going to let my esteemed colleague here tonight, George Forbes, share that with you.
So, basically, between consolidation, 67, 68, and 82, there was 15 years pretty much of strife. And Jacksonville, really, the consolidated county, and I'm going to say Jacksonville, really wanted to kill the beaches bad. There was a lot of bad blood between us. And I think there was just, they're just mystified that the beaches still existed. So shortly after the vote, the early 60s, there was a first lawsuit. It was Jackson versus the consolidated government of the City of Jacksonville. And there they contended that it was unconstitutional for the beaches cities to still exist because we were a city within the city. And we can't be a city within the city. Because remember, Jacksonville is now a city in the county. And we're still cities in there. And so that one was unfortunate because we wouldn't be here today. The beaches won that lawsuit. But there was a second one shortly thereafter in 1974 that was filed by the City of Jacksonville Beach. It's called Albury versus the City of Jacksonville. And in that one, the City of Jacksonville came down and they said, you can't charge occupation licenses. And today we call those business taxes, but in those days they called them that. And we sued them because, let me just read this from the actual complaint. Defendant city under the new charter adopted in 67. We were trying to find out what our relationship with them was. The beach's involvement sought to determine whether they might levy municipal occupation license taxes on persons engaged in occupations within their jurisdictions, with which the consolidated government said we couldn't do, as well as whether we have the right to receive directly from the state and federal agencies revenues designated for our municipalities. Again, the consolidated government said we couldn't. Well, unfortunately, we lost that lawsuit initially. The trial court granted substantially the relief sought by the consolidated government, holding the beach's involvement to subordinate urban service districts and no longer entitled to levy occupation license taxes or otherwise assert legal standing of incorporated municipalities. Wow, that's not what the law said to me. Well, anyway, an appeal of the beach's involvement, we won that lawsuit, and here's what the court said. It said the beach's involvement continued to exist as quasi-municipal corporations. They act as such. They are empowered to exercise all municipal functions which they are permitted to perform under their original municipal charters, and that prior to consolidation, and that they are corporate entities having the same rights as duly constituted municipal corporations to share and receive and expend revenues allocatable to municipal corporations. That's a really big deal. Without that one, we would have been going also. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is, it's not like Jacksonville just sat down and said, that's okay, we have 3 beach cities. There's a tremendous amount of animosity for that first 15 years. And then there was a third lawsuit filed in 1979 by the 3 beach cities. It was a lawsuit over, surprise, surprise, minimum-rated services. And that one was settled by the 1982 agreement. Remember the 1982 agreement, which I'm going to discuss a little bit tonight, that's still in existence, that still exists. And last but not least, you might think, okay, well that settled all, didn't it? As far as Jacksonville Beach is concerned, not really. I mean, let me tell you this. Just as recently as 2020, there was a lawsuit filed, not by the City of Jacksonville, by a private entity over a billboard in Jacksonville Beach. And they stated that, let me just read this. The appellants, that's a billboard company, state that Duval County's billboard regulatory scheme preempts the city's regulatory scheme because the billboard at issue complies with Duval County's restrictions. I mean, what? You know, we have our own zoning code, they have their own zoning code. And I want to tell you, the beaches need to be forever vigilant because, this occurred over 20 years ago when I was city manager here. The City of Jacksonville took all the beaches' rights out of their charter. And they did it in such a way that the rules of procedure for the county said that when they change the charter, they have to have strikeouts and additions. Well, our own county representative voted for it. He had no idea he was voting for it. Why is that? Because they didn't show any of that. They didn't show it was there. They didn't show they took it out. They didn't show the addition. And so some officials came in here and they said, oh, by the way, Jacksonville Beach, they showed up for council meetings, their attorneys, and said, you're under the city's trade code. I said, no, we're not. It's a planning and zoning issue, your own stuff. We're not following under you. And they said, well, yes, you do. We said, no, you don't. Well, then we proceeded. Steve Stratford was a superb attorney, many of you know. He proceeded to check things out and wonder why they weren't there. And we figured it out. We went to the city of Jacksonville. We said, look, went to the mayor of Jacksonville at the time, and I personally said, look, we're going to drop a lawsuit on you tomorrow morning. I just want you to know, it's nothing personal. I guess it is where we're getting the lawsuit dropped on you, but this is what we got to do. And he told me, he said, George, please don't do that. If what you say is correct, I'll get it straightened out. And they did. To their credit, they did. It took them 2 years to do it, but they did put our rights back in the charter. Now, as part of looking at this, and the most recent 2020 law, so I went back just within the past couple of days. I looked at the county charter. Throughout the charter, went through the ordinances, and all the rights are in it. The charter says we have our rights as municipalities. Their code of ordinances, the zoning code, that doesn't apply to beach cities involvement. So right now, everything is squared away. But I guess I'm bringing up these examples to let you know, all the beaches officials out here, you've got to be forever vigilant. And I think a lot of the times the county's like a big elephant to us. And a lot of times they step on this, they may not even realize it at the time. But you really have to watch what they're doing.
Thank you, George. And let me tell you something. They had a chief administrative officer while I was still on council by the name of Sam Musa. Those of you that know Sam, he was one tough cookie. I had the privilege, the honor, and the great experience of seeing this guy and Musa negotiate. Let me tell you who won. He's a guy I want to mind. Oh, come on, George. You know he did, because I know what the results were. Anyway, but thanks, George. Fast forward ahead to early 1990s. I was mayor of Atlantic Beach, and I had been negotiating with Jacksonville for a long time, both with 2 Jacksonville mayors and the city council. Finally, after another non-productive meeting with Warren Jones, who was the city council president at the time, and Chuck Arnold, who was Jacksonville general counsel, I said to them, we just weren't getting anywhere, and I was going to ask my commission to support a motion to file suit against the City of Jacksonville over the issue of double taxation and services. The commission agreed and the suit was filed. Atlantic Beach was going to go it alone. One point to briefly dwell on was taxation. The 1982 agreement established a property tax discount of 18.8%. Looking at it differently, people at the beaches were being charged 81.2% for county services. We didn't think that was equitable, hence the suit. Actually, I tried to find someone to tell me how they arrived at that 18.8%. And I could never find, talking to Bob Johnson and others, I could never find how they arrived at. Regrettably, that's sort of a basis for where they ended up in the amendments in the 90s. And it's still a challenge for me to understand how they, was it just arbitrary? I don't know. Also, while the 1982 local agreement listed county services by providing it by name, there was no definition of those services. Animal control was an example. When they responded, the response was poor, and many times Jacksonville Animal Control would argue that it was not their job to serve the beaches. Once, when our people complained about the poor service, they were told we were getting the same level of crummy service that was given in Jacksonville.
That's true.
And it was true. So what did all of the beach communities do? We ended up hiring our own animal control officers. Matter of fact, several of them with some of the communities, and established animal control years ago because of that. In the meantime, several people were getting together and having a general conversation about government at the beaches, and the idea was proposed, well, why not a new county? Ocean County was born. There's not been a new county created in Florida since Gilchrist County broke away from Alachua County in 1925. So, with great enthusiasm and gusto, the Ocean County Citizens Association was formed and went about the task of studying the possibility. Committees were formed to study everything from solid waste to education. Chairs on the committee had credibility because we found people who were knowledgeable in the various fields. For example, Ed Harpart, who was a former Jacksonville Beach City Council member, had also been a superintendent of schools in Illinois, and he chaired the education committee. The monthly meetings would normally have over a couple hundred people in attendance. We started off with what was maybe tongue-in-cheek, but then it got serious. We even had a pretty snazzy logo. Recently, I turned over my Ocean County files to Chris Hoffman at the Beaches Museum, including my really valuable Ocean County t-shirt with a Mac Daddy Ocean County logo on it. Some people in Ponte Vedra approached us about including Ponte Vedra in Ocean County. We declined, pointing out that fighting Duval County would be tough enough, but fighting St. John's too was out of the question. And by the way, the movement drew national media attention. While there were naysayers, including surprisingly a couple of Beach's elected officials, the overall support for Ocean County was very strong. Further strengthened by a newspaper article in the Times-Union on Sunday, March 25th, 1995, that read, "New County Could Work report says the Beaches cities gained ammunition last week in their move to secede from Duval County, but skeptics still aren't convinced the plan will fly. A state-funded study released Friday found that Ocean County could succeed and would cost Beaches residents less in taxes than they paid in Duval County. I think it clearly and specifically states our contention all along that A, it would be more efficient, and B, less costly," said Bill Gulliford, chairman of the Ocean County Committee and former mayor of Atlantic Beach. Yeah, I wasn't biased. Jacksonville Mayor Ed Austin, who had been a skeptic of Ocean County, said the report didn't change his mind. Well, of course it didn't. He didn't agree, Mayor Ed, because that would have been a big revenue drop for Jacksonville had it passed. I stated during the prior election for mayor that if I drew no opposition, I would not run the next time. I drew no opposition in 1993 while the suit was ongoing, kept my word, and retired from public office. I did continue to serve as the chairman of Ocean County Citizens Association. The stage was set for either the culmination of the Atlantic Beach suit, the creation of Ocean County, or serious negotiations with Jacksonville. With John Delaney becoming mayor, negotiations with all three beach cities started. And no one better to tell you about those negotiations than the best negotiator at the beach, George Forbes. He was there and directly involved. So George, take it away. He's got PowerPoint and everything. You're going to be really impressed with this.
PowerPoint, okay. Next slide.
Stand right in front of Sam.
Most city officials, and most people think that county is just like the city. Most officials, residents, city officials think that running the county is just like running a city. It's not. It's many times more complicated. You've got all the other officers, but I wanted to show you this because in the 1982 agreement, we agreed this is what the county services were. And a particular note on there, some of you talked about animal control, and some of you have, I've read in some newspaper articles of people saying that fire is a county service. Well, rescue is, but fire isn't. And again, this is something that we all agree to. Okay, if you go to the next slide. So anyway, actually go back just 1 second. The key thing I want you to see is how many more things the county has to do. I mean, not only the officers, the elected property appraiser, tax collector, supervisor of elections, you've got the court system, you've got hospitals, you've got the port authority, transportation, health services, you've got the sports complex and auditorium, you've got public housing, jails and prisons, sheriff. All I'm saying is there's an awful lot of things there that are very expensive. So sometimes you have to be careful what you ask for. Next slide. This is really critical, and I've heard this too, and it's true. If you read this, B, it says that they can't discriminate against us on their services. If it's a county service, they have to treat us equitably to the rest of the county citizens. But that doesn't always really happen. And sometimes, recently at a meeting just a few months ago, I heard some complaints about animal control, and isn't Jacksonville supposed to help us with animal control? And I have a little bit different perspective because what happened to three cities when I was city manager is the county one day stopped. We have a system here. We do have our own officers, but we collect the dogs, keep them. It's either 3 or 5 days in Jacksonville Beach for a local person to pick them up. But if they don't, we turn them over to the county because we don't have to do this at all. We don't have to do anything in animal control. It's totally a county function. But one day, somebody woke up in the city of Jacksonville. They said, you know, we don't have to do this for the beaches. And they got with their attorney. I heard this 100 times when I was city manager. Our attorney, I said, we called them up. We said, this is Interlocal Agreement. This is what you got to do. They said, we checked with our attorney. And they said, we don't have to do this. Again, I heard this time and time again throughout my career. So they said they didn't have to do it. Well, anybody that knows us or me knows that they're not going to be the final answer. So, but again, it's like moving an elephant. The city, you know they're dead wrong. They ought to know they're dead wrong if they can read. They just lie down on the road and say, move me. And that takes a lot of effort, really, seriously. It takes a lot of effort to fight them and go toe-to-toe and get them to move. Well, finally, Carrie Stewart was the city administrator at the time. I sat down in her office with her. And she's a very nice, reasonable lady. And she agreed that the cities were right and that they would pick up the dogs again. But you know, gosh darn, that takes an awful lot of work. And this is the problem with getting to the city of Jacksonville. Time and time again, they wake up, we check with our attorney, and we don't have to. Well, maybe those attorneys should read the Interlocal Agreement. Because a lot of times they don't know what it says. I mean, I sat down with one of the city attorneys assigned. There's a lot of them, there's not just one person. And I had to explain to her that, no, I wasn't coming begging for money, for community block grant money. You owe me the money. It's in the local agreement that you owe me a percentage of that money. And she had no idea. You know, she thought I was like some nonprofit organization, just sticking my hand out. So things like this happen time and time again with Jacksonville. It happened throughout my entire career, and it'll happen again. So your city staff really needs to be on the ball and not accept sometimes their answers. So I'm sorry, I keep standing in front of that on the way. So let's go to the next slide. So another key thing about the 82 agreement was that we have the right to deposit our garbage and refuse in the landfill, and that, as a matter of fact, 2B is really impressive. The city of Jacksonville forgives sanitary landfill charges, non-existent roads in the city, and we'll get cash refund payment. That's a great deal, Bill. I'll be reading that. Okay, so this is the 82 agreement, so let's go to the next slide. One really critical thing, the next slide, they put Mayor Ed Austin up there because I will never forget this. I mean, this happened 30 years ago, and it's still clear as a bell to me. So in 1995, Ed Austin was still mayor, and he gave a speech to some other state about how great consolidated government was. And they asked him, well, why do the beaches opt out? I mean, you've got the consolidated government, it's good. Why do the beaches opt out? And his answer was more or less, I have no idea. And I'm not making this up, he really did. He said, I have no idea. And I thought, that just underlines the problems we have with the city of Jacksonville. That at least precluded all the way through my day. They have no idea why we're here. Some of their employees have no idea that we exist. I can't tell you how many times I would get a call from somebody who was referred to by Jacksonville Parks and Recreation on the pier because they were told that Jacksonville Beach owns a pier. Now I understand that that's a logical thought process. It's called the Jacksonville Beach Pier. And we do have an interlocal agreement with Jacksonville that we maintain the parking for the pier and certain things we have to provide. That's logical. But when you call the Jacksonville Parks and Recreation Department, I would think the Parks and Recreation Department would know that they own the pier. You know, the only other person that tried to drag me into the pier is that guy Bill Gulliford, who wanted me to take over parts of it. But
well, we've been run better.
But anyway, I just want to say that because it's a symptom of the problems that sometimes will exist. Now the other thing on here, and really the whole nuts and bolts of this thing as far as I'm concerned, is the military. And in the 96 agreement, we negotiated a military for all 3 beach cities that increased our millage reduction from 1.76 up to, it's on here somewhere on the slide, 3.2907. That's a 1.5 millage decrease. So you take the county's millage, subtract the 3.9, and that's what our millage is. It's a big decrease. That's what that means, 1.5 mils basically decrease to citizens. So, and everybody in all 3 beach cities got the same deal. Our deal was a little bit different though because I saw an opportunity to get, we were looking for years to try and build a decrepit city hall and police building So ours is a little different because we didn't take that 1.5 mil deduction right away. We took a half a mil deduction for our residents to get a tax bill deduction right away. We took the other millage over a 10-year period, and the gap between the 1.5 and the 1 would pay for a $4 million loan for the police and fire building over 10 years. It actually paid for it over 7 years, but that's how we got a new police. That's how the city hall there now exists, and that's how our police building exists. And we also built Lakeland Plaza with that and Renaissance monies. Some of you have been around a long time, I remember the Renaissance monies. We had $1.75 million from that to build Lakeland Plaza. So that's some of the difference. The other big difference is that, well, first I'm going to go through with the rest of them and explain how they're the same. So all three beach cities also received 100% funding for lifeguards and beach cleanup. We used to get 50% funding. We had 100%. That's a good deal. It's a fair deal. And the only problem was Lex Hastert. Lex Hastert is one of the finest county managers you could ever meet. And he said that we had to have a 3% cap if we wanted us to do that deal. So we got a 3% cap, which in some ways wasn't quite fair to Jacksonville Beach, but that's another story. So, next slide. Everybody got, all beach cities got their community development block grant entitlement funds, which go to Jacksonville. We got them based on a population percentage formula. Now, the population percentage formula is really, really important because what Jacksonville would normally do is they would take their population, the whole county, and then divide it by the city's population. Well, that's a big advantage to the city. What this population formula does, it takes all the cities out of the county and then divides the county by the city's population. And that will give you a bit better deal for the cities. The only place that population formula does not exist is in the half-cent sales tax, because I personally insisted that the formula, the beach's population at the time stay that way, because I was particularly worried about Neptune Beach that wouldn't be growing at all in the future, and making sure that we had a formula that would stay the way it was there, and they agreed to that. There's a lot of stories around that also. But cross-Florida barge canal funds, everybody knows what that is, right? You know, years ago they agreed to build a barge canal across the entire state of Florida. It was stopped 30, 40 years ago, and what they did is they gave us back the money that was collected from Duval County. They gave us back, and they gave us back our percentages on that, which was a nice sum of money for Jacksonville Beach. It was a little over $200,000. So, and it had very specific uses it had to be used for, but all three of these cities got the same amount based on the percent population. Also, the 1982 agreement continues as modified by the 96 agreement, so it's still standing, except as modified by the 96 agreement. And also, G is a big deal. The parties agree the 96 amendment resolves and satisfies any and all past and present issues, not future, but past and present. So that was a big deal. So, in this too, I'm talking about the council auditors. You know, the council auditors, they felt that we were getting too good a deal on this 1996 agreement. I can't tell you how many times they complained to me that we were getting too good a deal. And I could name names. What bothers me, these guys all live in Jacksonville Beach, for God's sakes. Can't they have a little loyalty? But anyway, they're really good guys, very professional guys, but they drove me crazy all the time telling me I was getting too good a deal. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide, we're going to talk about some differences. Well, one difference is landfill fees. The City of Jacksonville Beach refused to change anything in the 82 agreement. Mayor Bill Latham, not Charlie Latham, but Bill Latham, pretty much says we are his dead body would change anything in the 82 agreement. Jacksonville at the time, like they wanted us to give up Penman Road. Penman Road, one of the things not mentioned in these slides, I couldn't talk about everything, is that there are many roads that are county roads in the local agreement. That's fine. Penman Road's a county road, which it should be. So they have to maintain it. And they wanted us to take that out of the local agreement to say that that's the City of Jacksonville Beach's sole responsibility, and the county didn't worry about it. And we would not agree with that. They also, I talked to Lex Hastert about, he wanted us to pay landfill charges. And just think about this for a second. And we need to talk about local politics a little bit. It wasn't that long ago that we had a mayor in Jacksonville who one garbage fees for the Jacksonville residents. Now, you guys have been paying forever, so you didn't think about it. But Jacksonville did not charge any garbage fees back then to residents. So they got it as part of the general fund. It was basically free to them, and they were still paying for it to the general fund. And he wanted to impose a garbage fee, and it was, literally didn't go with the citizens, and he was not reelected. And a lot of reasons people think he wasn't reelected is because he proposed that fee. And you're thinking, well, that's really strange. Well, not so much. Cities are very different. Let me tell you this, out west, if you want to put a water meter in, you will get thrown out of office in many cities, not all, but in some cities, because it's very controversial to put a water meter. Now, they do get charged a fee for water, but everybody gets the same charge. So if I use 1,000 gallons or 9,000 gallons, I'm getting the same charge. So all I'm saying is that it was very controversial, and our thought was, well, if your citizens don't have to pay a garbage fee, why should our citizens? So, and there's still some problems with that today, because Jacksonville, I understand, does charge a garbage fee today, but they still have to subsidize it because it doesn't pay the full cost of it. So basically, you find people in the beaches, you're still subsidizing garbage for Jacksonville. So, anyway, landfill fees, now this is pretty convoluted. In Atlantic Beach, the landfill fees on residential use of voids, less than commercial units no longer receive free landfill services. Tipping fees is based on a formula of when the building changed hands or when it was sold or something, this formula went in effect. I really don't quite understand it. I'm not sure anybody's, but I will tell you, the one about the Atlantic Beach tipping fee, ask Jim Hansen. Jim Hansen is the guru. He's a former city manager, right? He's the guru of the tipping fees because he did everything he could besides cut off his arm not to pay it. But anyway, now Neptune Beach reads a lot differently. Neptune Beach says that the city of Jacksonville has the uniform solid waste processing disposal fees, they got to pay it, and that part of the 82 agreement's triggered. Totally different wording. And then also, fire and rescue. The city of Jacksonville provided a fire truck in good repair and transferred the title to Atlantic Beach and said they'd maintain it for 3 years. And in return, if you look at number C, Atlantic Beach agreed that they provide fire services to Neptune Beach. And in return, they get $150,000 a year for that. Plus, I'll go to the next slide, they also said that they provide police patrol response services to the northeast corner of the city of Jacksonville, adjacent to the city of Atlantic Beach. As you know, I lived here 26 years and I still don't know where all the dividing line is between Atlantic Beach and consolidated government. And so it made sense for them to help them out a little bit there. And they did. Also, Sherry Drive, the city of Jacksonville agreed to provide for repairing and resurfacing Sherry Drive. Hopkins Creek drainage, this couldn't have ever happened because they say that Atlantic Beach agreed that the drainage in Hopkins Creek, which by the way is kind of weird because it's located in Neptune Beach, so just like the fire service, and Neptune Beach got free fire service out of that. Why is that in Atlantic Beach's agreement? We'll never know. And then Hopkins Creek is all of Neptune Beach and Jacksonville Beach, by the way, and yet they agreed that they were going to reconstruct. I don't know if they ever did that because I spent on 2 occasions getting a lot of money for Jacks Beach and Neptune Beach, over $10 million to redo that from the state much later on. And then annexation, if Neptune Beach or Atlantic Beach are going to annex anything, they've got to first discuss it with the county. Now that's not in Jacksonville Beach because we have the intercoastal waterway that separates us throughout the whole thing, so it's kind of irrelevant. And then number 8, City of Jacksonville paid $20,000 annually to Neptune Beach to exclude certain landscape maintenance for their part of Pembroke Road and Florida Boulevard. And they got paid for that $20,000. And most of these, when we talk about a number, they can increase to 3% a year to account for inflation. So basically, there are a lot of minor differences between them. I've gotten wiped out by the other cities for a long time over not having to pay a tipping fee. They still beat me up every time they see me.
You deserve every bit of it too.
And then you get back to it, and I always tell them, this is a true story, I'm sure you Neptune Beach officials would be glad to hear this. I think Neptune Beach got the best deal. You didn't have to pay for fire services. Do you realize how much fire services cost the city of Jacksonville Beach a year? It's $2.7 million. Thank you for asking. So I'm just telling you, and that doesn't even include the $700,000 towards pensions. I know, I looked it up online the other day. So anyway, and then here's the big deal. Beach agreed to dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice. So we talk about, so I still read the newspaper sometimes, some complaints. Let's talk about animal control. I mean, the true story is, I believe, when I was city manager here, that we had just as many animal control people as Jacksonville did. Really, they had, as far as people like animal control officers helping out with the dogs, they had very few people, they really did. And that's why we picked up, basically we picked up that, much of that service. So, what I try to just do here is explain, yeah, there's some differences, there's some similarities. Main difference really is Jackson Beach does not pay a tipping fee, and then there's a lot of minor things. Again, to me, the other big deal is Neptune Beach doesn't have to pay for fire. Now, I recently read a statement in the newspaper from Atlantic Beach complaining that Neptune Beach doesn't pay for fire. And I couldn't help but giggle because you're in local agreement, you're the ones that did that, so I don't know where the complaints are coming from. So a critical thing to remember is that the interlocal agreement is extremely important. It became consolidated. We fought for 15 years. There were 3 lawsuits. Luckily, the beaches basically won them, or else we wouldn't be here today. And then we've been working since then through the local agreements. I was going to say this. Now, there are times when beach people have a tendency to gripe against the county. But, we're lucky to have 4 cities in this county. I think Broward County has 38 cities. I talked to the county manager. He told me everybody in the county either is a county official, knows a county official, or a city person, or is related to one, and it drives them insane, which I can believe. Basically, all in all, we get along pretty good with the county. And, we can complain all we want, but I remember a time not so long ago when we desperately needed big money for shore protection for those berms that were wiped out by a hurricane. And this man here went there and got somewhere around $8 million on the fly to repair those berms to protect us from a hurricane. So, I mean, that was a big deal, and they did that for us. So, I think, there are times sometimes, and let's face it, we beach people, we kind of cop an attitude a little bit, and that's true. You ever see those bumper stickers, never cross the ditch, I never had one of those on my car. When it was on briefly, Jerry Howell put it on my car. But so that's a little different. But basically, we have it's our cities that deliver the services. When you look at the state of Florida, our cities are doing a good job. And the real problem, we have a bigger problem now, in my opinion, with the state of Florida than we do with the county. However, that being said, we do have to be vigilant. I could tell you 100 more stories, and I can just in a couple minutes. We talked about animal control. I could tell you stories about Beaches Energy, couldn't I, Jerry? Yeah. I could tell you stories about, that was Tommy Missouri, by the way, was the mayor on the garbage fee. We talked about the tree code a little bit. We talked about taking the beaches cities right side of the charter. We talked about our sign code and their attorneys. But again, there's a lot of good things that are going on too. So Jimmy, you want to add?
Got one thing, and then we'll open up for questions. I can say unequivocally, if I had still been the mayor, I would have fought like hell to continue the suit against the City of Jacksonville, and here's why. Right now, this was based on the original 18.8% differential that I told you about. That was sort of the foundation for arriving at a fixed millage rate, which is what we pay now for county services. That fixed rate, the basis was a deduction of 3.2907 mills from whatever the county was charging in the rest of the county. That nets to, in 2024, for instance, that nets to Beaches community or the Beaches residents or taxpayers paying 8.0262 mills for county services. Some years back, we did a little bit of research and compared it with other metropolitan counties to see what they were charging millage-wise for county services within their county boundaries or within the municipal boundaries. And we found it was pretty eye-opening because generally we were looking at roughly 5-point-some mills, about 3 mills differential. Now, that's not a fair way to compare. You need to go much deeper than that, but I will say this much. City of Jacksonville gets the equivalent of, at least the last time I looked, the equivalent of 2 mills contribution each year from JEA. How many other counties get a contribution from, say, a utility like that? I don't know. I know Orlando's, of course, I think got a community-owned utility, but you know, that's why you can't just unequivocally say. But I think what would have happened as a result of that lawsuit would have been a real in-depth study of the millage rate as it applies to beach residents paying for county services. And that's why I was hoping, because, you know, George is right. I mean, I don't have animosity. I sat on the Jacksonville City Council for 8 years and made a lot of friends, got ambushed over the garbage fee thing at 1:25 in the morning with a floor amendment. But other than that, I didn't feel bad about Jacksonville. And I was successful in getting 6 of my fellow councilmen to vote against the assessment of the garbage, or the tipping fees to the 2 beach communities, but we didn't prevail, needless to say. But, you know, and George is right, they do a lot of good things. I will say this also, and I'm glad Ron's here, and Ron's well aware of it, probably more so than I am. They are looking at some serious financial challenges in the next year or two. And there are other issues, for instance, to talk about taking the sales tax that's been funding the Better Jacksonville plan, and when that's paid off, picking it up now to pay 2 years on the stadium, but then to reduce the unfunded pension liability in Jacksonville. Well, we've taken care of our pension liability as cities. Why don't we get some of that back? And I raised that issue when we came up with that plan, and I was on the council. I knew I couldn't challenge him on the floor of the council because it probably would be 18-1. But it is an issue at some point in the future. You younger people, I hope you remember that, especially if you get elected to office, that needs to be raised for the City of Jacksonville when it starts funding that unfunded liability.
Well, let me interject there. First off, he's absolutely right that you know, we thought we had the pension problem solved with the half-cent sales tax. It looks like that's not going to be solved. And I think there's, you know, Jacksonville's is it $750, $800 million for the stadium. I think they pledged $50 million, it might be $100 million for the college campus use floor downtown. That's all nice and all. I'm not going to argue about it, but it's a matter of priorities. And in the future, I don't know how they're going to pay for all this. I honestly don't know. I think that one of the greatest problems that we're having in the future, especially for those of you who haven't become mayor of Jacksonville, is, you know, you might inherit a problem that you never dreamed of. The second thing is, let's talk about the half-cent sales tax for the pensions. Initially, when they were discussing the state legislature, I followed them like a hawk. Initially, there was money like the half-cent sales tax that was supposed to be shared with the municipalities. But the last minute, they changed it, cut us out of it, and said this only dealt with the Jackson and the pensions. And honestly, I understand it at the time because that was a miracle to ever get through. That could have never gotten through without Mayor Craig at the time. Never would have happened. He's the only one that could have pushed that through. But now let's get to the half-cent sales tax of the Jacksonville plan. That could have only gotten through the Mayor Delaney. And I do want to say, you know, we cut a lot of deals with Mayor Delaney. Council auditors always said, I got to deal. But Mayor Delaney, none of this would have happened without Mayor Delaney. The only reason 96 group got done, in my opinion, was Mayor Delaney, Mayor Bill Latham, the Mayor of Jacksonville Beach, supported Mayor Delaney for mayor when he was 3% of the polls. So, you know, we had a good reputation at the time. But here's what none of you know except me about that half-cent sales tax. I wasn't real happy with the formula for the half-cent sales tax. So I went back and I called the mayor and I said, look, we need a little more money out of this. And I negotiated a deal with the mayor that the City of Jacksonville Beach got $100,000 more a year from that. Atlanta Beach got $60,000 more a year for that. And Neptune Beach got $30,000 more a year for that. And I did that all by myself. The other 2 cities wouldn't support me. And in return for that, Mayor Delaney still barely talks to me so bad. But he's a very good man. He's a fine mayor. And without him, a lot of this wouldn't have been possible. But yes, when they switched from the Better Jacksonville plan to the pensions, you know, Jacksonville Beach is a pension number. We contracted our fire department, but we're stuck with paying the pensions of the firefighters. Right now, our bill for that's about somewhere around $750,000 a year. So, you know, we deserve our share of that money too. And hey, we voted to help them with that money. So when 2035 comes or whatever, we deserve our share of that. And I hope you have city officials sharp enough at the time to take that on, because I can assure you the city officials on Bill's time and my time are plenty sharp enough to follow all this very carefully.
Well, we're gonna count on people like Jessica and Chris and other youngsters to carry it through in 2035.
They have to be in office.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, they got to be for building.
Thanks for calling me young. I'll take it.
Yeah, questions?
Okay, well, before we start with questions, just please be mindful of the guidelines here so we can get in as many questions as possible. So, Mayor Ford. If you want one, or if you can speak loud enough.
Hey, George, I can't begin to unpack everything you said tonight. We're going to have to revisit all of that. But notwithstanding the great deal that you negotiated for Jacksonville Beach with no tipping fees, since you're aware that Atlantic Beach, as an example, pays tipping fees and we have full cost allocation to our citizens, in this period where Jacksonville is subsidizing their citizens, what do you suggest is a fair way to approach this?
You know, Bill's not going to believe this coming from me, but I really think it needs to be approaching more of a cooperative equity issue than in their face. I don't think in their face is going to be very workable right now, and I don't think that we have the same horsepower we did back in '96 and that era. I just think things are a lot different with Jacksonville now. The Republican versus Democrat thing is really flared up there, and I don't think there's the same relationships. And I think you need to rebuild those relationships. You're not going to do that you're only going to do that by trying to form a cooperative deal and a deal based on more fairness, based on what they're doing. I don't think you're going to do it by demanding that fire service is a county service, because it's not.
Well, let me
I'm
interject.
too blunt, I apologize for being so blunt.
No,
That's
very
why I
well.
am.
And to that end, he brought it up. We got that $7.5 million to restore the beaches. It was done on a very short time frame. It was a unanimous vote to spend that money. So there have been times where they've been very cooperative, and you got to keep that in mind. It can't be all adversarial. So I think he's absolutely spot on there.
So the fire agreement, it occurs to me that in the 1982 Interlocal, each of the three beaches cities had their own fire departments. So I can understand back then not having it defined in the services provided by the county, but now everybody is JFRD. Does that change how you look at this, especially when you look at the inequities elsewhere that drive what former Mayor Bill has stated, was the intent?
Well, I think our greatest weakness is also our greatest strength. The beaches together, all three beach groups, all the population, I think it's probably about 40,000. I looked it up the other day, and they said the consolidated county's population is about 950,000. Does that sound right? So, we're a very small piece of the pie. So I think that, I hate to say this, I've got Jacksonville officials, councilors in the room, but I think that we're such a small piece of the pie. I think we ought to look at it that way, look at their total budget compared to what we're paying, and see if there's a way that we can work out an agreement there. I'd also say, again, I hate to say this, but the interlocal agreement says if they provide more services to us, that they can change the millage reduction plan. And there may be some wiggle room in there to work something out. That's what I do.
You say to potentially lower the contribution.
I'm saying that when it says this, I don't think I have the slide on it, what it says is if they start providing more services to the beaches, that they can change the discount that we get in the military. So I think there might be a little room for negotiation there to get that done. Again, making me say all this stuff, Jacksonville Councilman is sitting right there. But anyway, I just think there's Jeremy, what are you going to say about me? Don't say that.
I'm not. No, kudos to Bill for
for annexing some very valuable property at Lake Beach with very little opposition. So how you got that by the council, well, I'll never know.
Yeah, well, let me also remind, he said we're very small, we are, but we're very powerful. Because we contribute a substantial percentage relative to our size to the coffers of Jacksonville. What is it, 14%, I think? We're 5% of the total population, 14% of the contribution to the general fund in Jacksonville. You know, that's significant. And I understand, listen, that's a story everywhere. That you've seen areas where you've had beach appreciation that's gone to the roof all over the state of Florida, and that's to be, Ponte Vedra. Well, St. Johns County could not afford to lose Ponte Vedra to something like Ocean County because it was the golden calf at that time in St. Johns County. So that happens. That same thing in Nassau County with Amelia Island. So. What else? Another question? Anything? Oh, Ron, hey, when you're finished.
I just want to hear more about the Ocean County. Is that null and void now, or why didn't you pursue that? I wasn't quite clear.
Well, we didn't pursue it because of the negotiations and the final agreement. At that point, it became almost moot because you just didn't have any enthusiasm and support for it after that. And so it sort of ran out of steam. It would have been difficult to get it through the legislature. I mean, that would have been a big roadblock. One of the things I was told at the time was the biggest problem we'd have with the legislature is we'd really screw up their totally bizarre accounting and disbursement method for education throughout the state. They have this formula that doesn't make any sense a lot of times, and we just make that much harder, so the legislature would have a reason to say, no, we don't want to do that. But it was a great idea. We had a lot of fun doing it. I saw more community spirit at this beach during that period of time than anything else that's happened here. It was really a wonderful experience for me personally, and I think for a lot of people that were involved in it. There was a lot of enthusiasm about the community as a whole, and that was a great thing to have experienced. Anyway, Ron.
This is probably more of a comment than a question. We're looking at probably $1 billion jail. There's not a jail out here. There's only one jail in downtown. And I'm not sure if it will remain downtown. And we've got a courthouse.
It's not coming to the beach. You know, I got protests coming in.
And we've got a several $100 million courthouse that we've built that the beach communities use. But always when I get into this argument,
but we didn't have any say so on that Taj Mahal, that how much money spent either. So
that's probably true.
I know, but he's a friend.
No, I'm okay. I voted against it. It got me in trouble too.
I guess my question is, what is the future of the interlocal agreement? What do you see it just kind of continuing as we are?
Well, you know what?
Because one of the things I was always taught by my cousin and very dear friend Sam Busa, when I first ran for the council, he told me, never, Ron, ever reopen the interlocal agreement.
Yeah, he told me the same thing.
I think he said while George was alive.
Let me respond to that. In the amendment for Atlantic Beach, there was a provision that was not in either one of the other two amendments, and that said fundamentally that within a year, both parties would get together and they would try and merge the 1982 agreement with the amendment and come up with a working document. That never happened. So some months back, we made contact with the city, Courage made contact with the City of Jacksonville and formed a committee that I'm on to sit down with the administration and talk through the interlocal agreement. And we've had several meetings, and at the last meeting we had, I suggested that, look, we will come with point counterpoint. We all have our opinions. We're going to argue back and forth. We have our position, they have their position. Why not go out and find some independent entity, a political science department at one of the universities or some organization that is not biased, that sits down and looks at the relationships, looks at the agreement, and comes back and says, this is what we think. An objective, fair assessment of the relationship. And that would be a guideline for any future discussions, negotiations, and the like. And I think that process is going on. The city actually embraced it and said, City of Jacksonville, and said, okay, you guys go out and find that entity and then bring it back to us and we'll talk about funding it, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe both parties split the cost or however we end up doing it. And I think that'll have an impact.
You know, the interlocal agreements lasted 30 years. That's good. That's good without any change. And you know, as times change, things have to change a little bit. All we're asking you to do, you can walk over out of here tonight a year, is to make sure that you pick up the fire service costs for Atlantic Beach and Jacksonville Beach, and we're done. So,
You keep good, George.
So we hired George.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we ought to dispense with mayors and just have a king.
Any other questions? We are running out of time. Okay.
I had a question about Ocean County. I was curious, did you guys ever explore talking to St. Johns County about being absorbed into like St. Johns County and maybe pitting them against Newell County to see if they would offer us maybe a better deal than Newell County?
No.
No.
That's easy. We like the idea of being independent. You know, jumping from one fire to another fire isn't necessarily beneficial, and that's, I guess, how we probably view that. We like the independence of creating the county, and that's the whole focus. And like I said, if you saw that Magday logo, you would just be in awe.
You can see it at the beaches museum.
That's right, go to the beach museum, enjoy it.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Let's have a round of applause for And one last request, for those who are physically able, if you could help us stack the chairs, we can get out of here much quicker. Thank you so much.